The MVP conversation is shifting after Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens beat down on the Houston Texans in Week 17, but people are still trying to flip the conversation on its head. We talk about that, the support Lamar Jackson has gotten, plus some Ravens playoff scenarios, all that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, and we are here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today on this Purple Friday. You can even call it a Victory Friday if you want to, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every day, free and available as always. All podcasting platforms got you covered in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe, also in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe as well. We're a 5-day-a-week daily Ravens podcast, plus we go live after every Ravens game. We have bonus episodes, so if you want daily Ravens coverage, keep it locked in here on Locked On Ravens. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Ravens take care of business against the Texans in week number 17, 31-2. Reminds me maybe of a baseball score back in the day when the Orioles lost to the Texas Rangers 30-3, but they got the job done. Here to talk about that, the MVP conversation, and some Ravens playoff scenarios. It is the man, the myth, the legends himself. It is Sam Njoku of the Ravens Talk podcast. Sam, I don't think you could draw up a better Christmas for Ravens fans and for people who cover this team, where you got the Steelers losing in beatdown fashion of the Chiefs, and then the Ravens do some beating down themselves against that Houston Texans team that admittedly is struggling, but they did what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, and last time we talked, the Ravens hadn't even played the Steelers yet. So they played the Steelers, beat them down by 17 points. 4 days later, Christmas Day, Beyonce watching, they get the job done, and they handle the Texans by 29 points. And also the Steelers lose again, their third straight loss against the actual playoff team to the Kansas City Chiefs. So, yeah, it's a great day, great time to be a Ravens fan. Definitely happy holidays and Purple Friday victory. I'll take all of that because the Ravens are riding high and definitely turning into the team that we expected when the season started.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just about peaking at the right time. And there certainly were some issues early in the season. Luckily, the regular season is months long and not just a month. So you're able to go and work out your weaknesses, play to your strengths. And now Baltimore, winners of their last three, dominant fashion, 100-33 is the net score of those three games, which is just absolutely unbelievable. Sam, I know the MVP conversation, it's tiring for some. It's toxic, most definitely, between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Both guys having incredible seasons. Both guys do deserve the award. It's just that they're playing in the same season and having the same season as the other one, where you see the stats back up Lamar Jackson. Obviously, the win-loss record favors Josh Allen and the Bills. That's a big point of conversation as well. But then you see Lamar Jackson go out and dominate the Texans. And then before that, like you talked about, big divisional game against Pittsburgh. He has a great game. Josh Allen gets flexed into that 4:00 window against the Patriots. Doesn't really have a great game. The Patriots escape against, or I guess the Bills escape, against the 3-11 Patriots team. Then prior to that, yeah, it's the Giants, but that's a Jackson 5 we witnessed. So it's like, if we want to use the recency bias argument and take away that Buffalo-Baltimore game from back in September, we also have to magnify what has happened over these last couple of weeks. And so I think you said this best, Sam, the narrative is shifting and people are seeing and they're watching Lamar in these big spots. And the narrative was kind of, okay, well, if Lamar goes out there with the way that week 16 went with the Patriots and the Steelers games for both teams, if Lamar goes and dominates Houston on Christmas, well, man, I think he might just run away with the award. And I think that's what the narrative has now become, although I know not everybody is necessarily on board with that.
Yeah, and I enjoy the conversation because it's one of the few things where it doesn't necessarily get fixed on the field as far as scoreboard goes. So we can debate about who wins, but the guys got to go play and then we determine the outcome by the score. In this case, it's all about opinion. You know, the voters have to decide, and it's based on their opinion, and that's what makes it so fun for me to talk about. But yeah, Lamar Jackson definitely, in my opinion, is now the front runner based solely on the fact that, one, he has the better stats than Josh Allen. He beat him head to head, even though you go back to September for that game, but still that has to count for something now. Also, Lamar Jackson played well against a division rival Pittsburgh Steelers team that many thought was the kryptonite for Lamar. Not so fast now. Following up that Jackson 5 performance for the 3-touchdown performance against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then to go on Christmas Day in front of Beyonce, Houston, and the world to pretty much lay down the smack on the Houston Texans with a rushing touchdown and 2 passing touchdowns of his own as well. That just looked magnificent. And you mentioned it. Yes, Josh Allen did regress a little bit in that Patriots game. Patriots almost got the job done in the first half, but in the second half, of course, the Bills come by and get the job done. But yeah, it goes to show you, this is a 17-game stretch that decides this outcome. It's not just, one game where a guy throws 6 touchdowns and another guy struggles. You have to encompass the entirety of the season. And then also the end result matters the most. So what is the last person you're thinking about when the season ends? Right now, you have to say it's Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen doesn't have a lot of primetime games left. In fact, all of his games are syndicated television, 1 p.m. windows. We'll see what happens in week 18, but I don't think that they'd move that to anything primetime television-like. So Josh Allen pretty much has to go off of his stats, in my opinion, and maybe a couple of big shining moments that create highlights. But for the most part, looks like Lamar Jackson has it, and he deserves it. And you mentioned Josh Allen is also having a good season, but man, it's the eye test for me. When you look at Lamar Jackson, he's the best guy on the field. He didn't really have the stats pop out in the early goings of that game, but you could just tell who the best quarterback in the league was just by the way he played and how the defense had to really focus on this guy. I mean, it was very incredible to watch on Christmas Day, and we'll see what the Ravens do in the postseason. But yeah, this guy looks special.
Right. And to your point, I mean, obviously Super Bowl MVP matters a million times more than a regular season MVP. Yeah. Lamar would trade all his MVPs, even if he wins this third one, for a Super Bowl MVP, most definitely. But as I've said forever, my thing is give the award to the guy that deserves it. If it's Josh Allen, okay, then he deserves the award. That's fine. If it's Lamar, then okay, give him the award. He deserves it. And honestly, Sam, I'm not sure the Patriots really wanted to win that game because we saw how good they were doing in the first half, and they're like, "Hold on a second, we want Travis Hunter. One second here, we're gonna lose this game real quick." But even so, this isn't what have you done for me now lately, league. And if we're gonna use that argument for Lamar Jackson, we're also gonna use it for Josh Allen. It is about that. But Emmanuel Acho, who obviously has been a big Josh Allen guy, there's no secret about that. He wanted to make some stuff clear about how this whole process actually works, because he revealed that he got an email for voters about how the award works and what's going on with the ballots. And he read it out. He put it on the screen. So you have 5 spots to vote for the awards. Obviously, that includes MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, etc. And he was making the argument that we have to look at the actual ballot definitions of what an MVP stands for versus what an Offensive Player of the Year stands for. Literally word by word definition for Offensive Player of the Year being the award honors an offensive player who had the best all-around season. Meanwhile, the MVP, if you want to look at the actual ballot definition, is the player who had the most valuable season. So he didn't name names. He didn't say Lamar. Actually, he almost said Lamar. He almost slipped up and said Lamar. But he didn't say, okay, Josh Allen this, Lamar Jackson that. He just wanted to, I guess, bring awareness to the conversation that, hey, most valuable season versus best offensive season. The award honors a player who had the most valuable season. The conversation around Josh Allen, Sam, we see all this stuff. We understand what's going on here. People are making the argument that the Bills were supposed to be a team that they were going to fall off this season. Nobody had them winning as many games as they had. They trade away Stephon Diggs. Where are Josh Allen's weapons? And that's kind of the conversation of like, oh, well, Josh Allen is quote unquote more valuable than Lamar because he doesn't have the help Lamar has. And so that means he's winning more games with less and he's more valuable, which by the way, where was this when Lamar had like Willie Snead out there?
Took the words out of my mouth.
All that stuff. But second of all, I don't think that tells the whole story. If I'm James Cook in this situation, I'm just like, hey, I'm a good player, man. Khalil Shakir. Look, Lamar does have the better supporting cast. I'm not trying to deny that, Lamar doesn't have the best weapons he's ever had. And that's real. But I don't think it's this huge gap to the point where they go out there and trade for Amari Cooper. Shakir's a good player. They have guys like Dalton Kincaid. The offensive line is solid. I'm not saying that Josh Allen has a better supporting cast than Lamar, but using it as an argument of well, this makes Josh so much more valuable than Lamar, that's kind of where I draw the line with that.
I don't like that argument. I honestly don't. So Joe Burrow has no chance to win the MVP because he has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the field. Tom Brady doesn't have a chance because he has Randy Moss and Gronk. Peyton Manning didn't have a chance because he had Reggie Wayne and Edgar and James. I think that's a foolish narrative to use. And it's a narrative that you'll use if you want Josh Allen to win the award. I'll say that. And yeah, there's some kudos to the Bills franchise for getting the job done without Stephon Diggs. But are we going to award this guy because pundits wrongfully predicted the Bills' demise? I don't think that's much of anything. But yeah, to Acho's point, and that's my Nigerian brother right there. I get some respect to him because he's a Niger boy like me. But man, that's an awful take. Offensive player of the year is not going to go to Lamar Jackson. It's either going to go to Saquon Barkley or Jamar Chase. And the odds-on favorite, I think, is probably Saquon Barkley. This is the quarterback award. It's going to go to Lamar and Josh Allen. Lamar's the most valuable player to me. Without Lamar, this team doesn't have success. I saw a post on social media where they said, well, look at what the Ravens almost did against the Bengals a few years ago in the divisional round or the wild card round of the playoffs. That's nonsense. That was a few years ago. This is a completely different team, completely different outlook, and this team goes with Lamar Jackson. If Lamar Jackson's out, this team has no shot. Same with the Bills. So I'm just basing it off of talent. Who played the best this year? You're the most valuable player. That guy is definitely 100% Lamar Jackson. If you're going to use that, then Patrick Mahomes should be the MVP every year because without Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs wouldn't have the record that they do. So what are we really saying here? I think it's about talent, stats, who's played the best football. All of that encompasses an MVP. And right now, for me, that's Lamar Jackson. Now, if you think it's Josh Allen, that's okay too. But don't try and muddy the waters here and try and create some delusion of what the definition of MVP is. We all know what it is. It's the best player in the NFL that year. Right now, for me, Lamar Jackson.
Right. It does seem like, the criteria for it changes year after year based off of who people want to win the award or who that specific voter or person wants to win the award. And if you want to talk about big moments, Sam, Josh Allen's had a couple of them. Definitely. I mean, that Chiefs game, that run on fourth down, that was an MVP moment for Josh Allen, 1,000%. And that was when Lamar struggled. Josh took advantage of a couple of weeks where Lamar struggled. He pulled away in the MVP conversation there. But again, like you said, the foolish thing was calling it with a month to go when Lamar still had two big games left on the schedule. If Lamar had stunk it up against Pittsburgh and stunk it up against Houston, and those were his two big games, and sure, Josh Allen, he probably wins the award. But now the big games, honestly, you can argue Lamar has one more big game because you win this game against Cleveland and you win the North. If you lose that game, you open the door back up for the Steelers. It's about Lamar. We saw 4 MVP moments in that game against the Texans, in my opinion. I mean, multiple big plays, him scrambling around and hitting Mark Andrews, making Daniil Hunter look silly, and then firing it into Isaiah Likely, doing a little Steph Curry step away. And then obviously the run. But then the big one to me, Sam, was he breaks Michael Vick's record. All-time career rushing yard record for a quarterback on Christmas Day in front of a huge audience. And he acts so nonchalant about it, by the way. She's like, okay, that's cool. I did that. That's nice. But it's those moments where we saw that on Christmas last year where Lamar kind of stole that MVP away. It was Lamar versus Brock Purdy MVP matchup, and Lamar just kind of snatched that thing away. It seems like he has snatched it and, like you said, flipped the narrative again. But again, this narrative does flip-flopping all year long. But Lamar's gotten a lot of support. And as that narrative flips, the support continues to pour in for Lamar. Former teammates, former Ravens, current teammates, former players, former coaches. A lot of people supporting Lamar in the conversation. We'll talk about that as well as just what we're witnessing and how crazy it is that Lamar is this good at football. So be sure to stay tuned. We got a lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Game Time. I think it's awesome going to live events during the holidays, and I'm looking forward to making new memories this holiday season. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better, and it's the perfect gift. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals and great seats so that you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And so the Ravens and the Browns will face off at M&T Bank Stadium in Week 18. If you want tickets, be sure to check out Game Time. They have super deals and other tiers of deals. Plus, the app has so many great features like Game Time Picks, seat views, lowest price guarantee, Game Time ticket coverage, and so much more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, spelled LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. We're back here, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, Sam Njoku, talking with you on this Purple Victory Friday after the Ravens deliver the ultimate Christmas gift of a win. And the Steelers helped out a little too. Made your Christmas maybe a little more merry and bright if you're a Ravens fan with that loss that they took at the hands of the Kansas City Chiefs. Sam, the MVP conversation, we're talking about that. Torrey Smith, former Raven, he's been in Lamar's corner for ever, it seems like. He's been a big Lamar supporter. He had a couple of interesting points about the MVP and some of the other narratives, somewhat we talked about in the first part of the show. He said if the Ravens didn't drop 2 games or so early, the MVP wouldn't even be a debate. I still view it as an individual award. Wins shouldn't matter as much. The question is, who is the best player this season based off performance? The answer is Lamar. And I agree with this because you look at stats and we know the story. Lamar leads every category with Josh Allen except for rushing touchdowns and win-loss. If you want to throw that in the conversation, Lamar's single season as the second highest passer rating in NFL history, only behind Aaron Rodgers. Those stats continue to be backed up. I do agree with Torrey here where if you want to talk about team award, like, yes, Lamar gives the MVP as a team award because your offensive line has to block for you. Your receivers have to catch, like whatever it may be. But for Lamar as an individual, his ability both as a passer and as a runner, his ability, his knack to make highlight plays, not that Josh doesn't do that stuff himself because he does, but we also have to take into account like strength of schedule. The Ravens have beaten every single AFC playoff team except for the Chiefs, and they were a toe away from at least tying, maybe winning that game. They've had a brutal schedule this year, like absolutely like a gauntlet against these teams where, you know, if I'm going to bring it up, Sam, we know who's in that Bills division. We know how the Jets season went this year. We know Dolphins were a big disappointment. Nobody really was expecting anything from the Patriots this year. Meanwhile, the Ravens have to deal with Joe Burrow putting up 15 billion points every week against that defense that hadn't figured it out. The Browns and Jameis coming in there and being the underdog and taking that game. And then Pittsburgh, those games always are crazy. I think that's another argument you got to take into account too.
I had this conversation with Bills fans. They're finding any which way to deny that. But yeah, the fact is the Ravens had the top 10 most difficult schedule in the league this year. And you mentioned it. They faced and beat everyone in the AFC playoff picture currently, except for the Kansas City Chiefs. As you mentioned, if Isaiah Likely wore white shoes, it's a different game. You know, I tell Isaiah Likely all the time, hey, take away those striped shoes. We're all white. But anyway, the Ravens, yeah, they've had the gauntlet. They've been battle tested, and you know, to step away a little bit from the MVP conversation, this is going to pay huge dividends for the Ravens' confidence heading into the postseason. Having that victory against all of the teams will be great. But yeah, the MVP conversation is the best player who's played the best. Stats don't even mean as much as we think. Stats help the case, help paint the picture, but really, it's the eye test for me. I say it with LeBron James in the NBA all the time. He looks like the best player in the league. So does Lamar Jackson. I think he just looks too good. Of course, I'm trying not to take too much away from the Bills because they are a success story. They did beat the Chiefs. They did beat the Lions, albeit the Lions are kind of similar to the Texans right now a little bit as far as defense and the ability to get guys suited up for the game because of those injuries. But the fact of the matter is the Ravens have way bigger victories on their belt other than more than the Bills. And the Ravens beat the Bills badly. I mean, they just dismantled them. So I think all of that pays into consideration. I agree with Torrey Smith. Lamar Jackson is by far the best player. That's not a knock on Josh Allen. I know a lot of Bills fans want to take it like that, but it's just what we're witnessing history here. Lamar Jackson has a chance to break the highest passer rating in a season in the history of the sport. He's already hit the second place mark with Aaron Rodgers. He's a perfect game away from reaching that mark, and the Browns are next. And we know the Browns, even though they're, you know, a decent team to play against, they're thinking 2025. So we'll see what Lamar Jackson does in that contest. He has a chance to be that guy. So yeah, Lamar Jackson's clearly the best, and I don't think there's much of a debate, even though we love to have that debate. If you're really taking it seriously, really looking at both of these guys, in my opinion, it's Lamar.
Man, I mean, it is kind of fun to like be in these conversations and have Lamar Jackson as a guy that like, you know, you can fight for and like be like, man, this guy plays on a team that I like, or this guy plays on a team that I root for, plays on a team that I cover. Like this, it's a really cool thing to be able to even be in this conversation at all, where now the argument, Sam, it's even ascending beyond MVP. Like now the next conversation is if Lamar wins a third MVP, but not only that, it's if Lamar wins a Super Bowl, where is he all time in terms of quarterbacks? Like, is he a top 10? Is he top 5? Like, we're now entering that territory with a player who is as special as Lamar is, who has broken as much history and has broken as many records as Lamar Jackson has. It's really cool to have that. And plus, I think you're going to agree with Tori even more here, Sam, because he talked about the eye test. And he said, you can't pick the MVP based off numbers alone. Look at what your eyes tell you. Lamar's doing superhuman things every week. Folks act like it's normal, and it's not. Josh has some crazy wild plays, but Lamar's been different. No hate. Josh is one of my favorite people. And this has never been about me like hating Josh Allen. Like I do not hate Josh Allen. I think Josh is really fun to watch. Sometimes he flops a little too much, but regardless, he's still a really fun, exciting, amazing player and an amazing quarterback.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of those in the league right now.
Tori, stole the words out of my mouth. I didn't even read that. But yeah, the eye test. It's all about the eye test. Don't fool yourself. Just be honest with yourself and look at the film. This guy's clearly better. And to your point, if Lamar wins the MVP this year and wins the Super Bowl MVP, he's top 10 easily. I mean, there's no doubt about it in my mind. He's already, in my opinion, creeping in there regardless of whether he wins a championship or not. I think he's too good not to win one. So it's coming sooner or later, hopefully sooner for Ravens fans. But yeah, he's creeping into that territory. You got 3 MVPs. How many people in the history of the sport can say that? So we're witnessing some history here. And I think, and I said this about Tom Brady, and I told myself I was such a hater of Tom Brady because he always won. I wish I took a step back and just witnessed and appreciated the greatness that was Tom Brady. I'm not making that mistake again with Lamar Jackson. I'm just going to sit back and witness it, enjoy it, appreciate it, and not use, fatigue or, oh man, he's winning too much. I can't like him. So Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, 2 guys I admire very much. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the greatness that is both of those guys. But right now, Lamar Jackson's clearly the best.
Well, and that's the thing, right? I mean, I agree with you. It's almost like, how can you hate this guy? Not only if we want to take football out of it, he's an incredible person on top of all of his on-field talent, shows so much respect. He's humble, values community. Like he's someone that so many people look up to nowadays. And it's just, you hear even kids being like, yeah, I want to be like Lamar. Or, Lamar is somebody that I want to emulate growing up. And that, to me, for Lamar to have the impact that he's had because of how he's changed the position. And, you can go as far back as you want to with dynamic dual threat quarterbacks of guys who have, changed the position, switched the narrative, and really had an impact on the game in general. But, you hear guys who have done that acknowledge Lamar's greatness, like a Cam Newton. Michael Vick, obviously, is a very big supporter of Lamar. And it's like you have those guys in your corner. Plus, it's like you watch this guy each and every week. And I had this conversation after the game, Sam. I always feel like I'm numb to Lamar Jackson and like how great he is because he makes those crazy wild plays. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's kind of cool. Like we've seen the Isaiah Likely touchdown. I'm like, I've seen better Isaiah Likely Lamar scrambled touchdowns. Like, come on, we got to take it up another gear. But no, seriously, he's someone that if you don't watch him every week and you see one of those plays happen, you're like, what? How did that happen? No way. And then we're watching him every week and we're like, yeah, that happens like 2 or 3 times a game. Like it's light work for Lamar. So to have a player like that and to see him have that much greatness, it just feels like some of these narratives, Sam, it's either people want to be right about him because they were wrong about him during the draft process and they are so stubborn in that it's like, okay, one thing is proven wrong. Well, okay, I'm just going to go and I'm going to look at the next thing and I'm going to make that a big deal. It just feels like a lot of these things are forced. And I saw an argument a couple of days ago. Someone said that, we're just formulating arguments to formulate arguments at this point. It's like, if the guy deserves the award, he deserves the award. And it shouldn't matter, how he plays the position or, if he has Derrick Henry on his team or not. Lamar makes Derrick Henry better. Derrick Henry makes Lamar better. This is not about Derrick Henry coming in and making Lamar this MVP player. Because last I checked, Sam, Lamar won 2 MVPs without Derrick Henry on his team.
Exactly. And I think it's a synergy. I think it's Derrick Henry doing his thing. Remember, when he was in Tennessee, he was a dominant back, but he doesn't have the holes in this in the Tennessee that he does now. And Lamar Jackson also, even though he had J.K. Dobbins, even though he had Gus Edwards, the defenses are keying in on Derrick Henry a little bit more. Sometimes they don't key in on Derrick Henry, like we saw in the Texans game, and Derrick Henry's able to go crazy. And then by that time, it's too late. The defenses adjust, and then Lamar does his thing. But yeah, it's a synergy. It works both ways. It's why in the offseason, I was so shocked that the NFL allowed this to happen because I saw this coming a mile away. I knew Derrick Henry was going to do this, and I knew Lamar Jackson was going to be able to reap the benefits and this offense in general. My only concern is when Lamar finally wins a championship and Derrick Henry retires and heads off to the sunset, the next question will be, oh, well, can he do it without Derrick Henry? Does he need a dominant back to be a great quarterback? So I don't pay attention to the nonsense. Lamar is the best quarterback in the league right now. He's going to be good enough to win a championship, and when he does, let's just enjoy the moment instead of create another obstacle for this guy to overcome.
Absolutely. I'm all for that. I do believe that hopefully it's coming sooner rather than later. And the Ravens, they're peaking at the right time, it feels like. And coming up, we'll talk about that Texans game because it felt like the most complete win of the season for the Ravens by a pretty wide margin. We'll also dive into some interesting Ravens playoff scenarios and for Sam and I, who we prefer the Ravens to face off against. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. And the show is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it so long to the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free online courses, including Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, and so much more. They have the Great American Story and so many more courses you can check out. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. Hillsdale.edu/lockedon. We return Locked On Ravens with Sam Njoku. I am Kevin Ostreicher bringing you Baltimore Ravens talk here on this Friday edition of the show. If you're new to the channel, hit that like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form as well for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Sam, 31-2 almost feels more disrespectful than 31-0. Like, I don't know why. It just feels like having that 2 points on there. It's like, oh, yeah, kind of tried, but not really. Obviously, the play on that safety, that delayed handoff, I don't think you want to really run those from your own end zone. And obviously, Derrick Henry made a mistake by jumping outside and thinking he could beat I think it was Kamari Lassiter to the outside. But other than that, pretty flawless game all the way across the board. This was the first time, Sam, and I mentioned this on the stream I did on Wednesday and also yesterday's show. Feels like during the season, there's been maybe one unit that struggled and the other two units have come together and played really well, or one unit really costs the Ravens a win, or the other two units have to carry that unit across the finish line. It felt like in this game, all three units just dominated every single aspect. Offensively, Texans had no answer for Derrick Henry, and Lamar obviously picked his spots and delivered a bunch of really incredible plays. Defensively, this was a Zach Orr shutout, and got to give credit to him. I mean, felt like Zach Orr's defense had it so easy. Zach Orr wanted to go out there and hit somebody, so we hit our Darius Washington on the sideline. It ended up going still that's going to be the funniest moment to me in the NFL season. But that's kind of how the game went. Our Darius makes his second game-changing play in 2 weeks. He's been absolutely incredible. Special teams wise, Justin Tucker looks like he is all the way back. You know, Jordan Stout, Nick Moore, that unit is really coming together. And then you also have Steven Sims getting absolutely clobbered by his own teammate. The Ravens were great. The Texans were also just really bad. Like CJ Stroud was really bad in this game. Joe Mixon tried to fight Josh Johnson, and then I think he had 20 some yards. I don't remember the exact total he had, but averaged like 2.6 yards per carry. This just felt like a dominating win. I mean, what did you see in this one?
I saw perfection. I mean, it was a route from start to finish. And this defense, headlined by Kyle Hamilton, I think we talk about Kyle Hamilton moving in the back end and that being the difference, but our Darius Washington has been a solid piece to this puzzle. I mean, he has just been a very constant, almost above average, to the point where I'm thinking he's probably one of the better safeties in the league right now. I mean, he's just playing so good. His height's the only thing that's holding him back. I think there was a potential for an interception, but I think because of his height and size, the other guy, I think it was Schultz, just grabbed him and grabbed the ball over him. But other than that, Washington's been almost too perfect for this defense. And the Ravens wanted to have two safeties that were, kind of the free safeties so that they could use Kyle Hamilton in the line of scrimmage area. But this defense hasn't missed a beat. In fact, they've excelled in so many regards since moving Kyle Hamilton back there. Defense is great. Offense looks amazing. Even in the Steelers game, keeping 8 guys in the box and still having success running the football is just fantastic for this team. When you have that success with 8 guys in the box, it just opens up the passing game like you wouldn't believe. teams are having difficulties choosing between these two guys. Now that the offensive line is starting to get it together, I think there's still some situations where if your interior line of the Ravens is facing the top tier defensive front like the Eagles, there's going to be issues, but there aren't any defensive fronts like the Eagles in the AFC at all. And not the Chiefs, not the Steelers. No one has that defensive front. So the Ravens should be sitting pretty as long as they don't play the Eagles in the Super Bowl and anything like that. So not much to worry about then. The Ravens just look too good. I can't stress it enough. I was confident last year, and I don't know if I'm as confident this year because of the disappointment of last year, but I'm getting there. This team is just playing so well, and there aren't any holes on the offense as far as skill position goes. It's just, and we're talking about a game where we're talking about where was Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman in this game, even though the Ravens pretty much blew out the Texans. I mean, that's what we're talking about here in regards to this offense. So I'm very impressed. And not to mention, you mentioned it, Justin Tucker. A lot of people were against me when I talked about having Justin Tucker stay, not having anyone come in and substitute him, having him figure it out. He hasn't missed a kick since the Eagles game. He has been perfect, including hitting 50-yard bombs at least once a game. This Ravens team is dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, look, if they continue to play this way, I find a really hard time coming up with a team that can beat them on their way to a Super Bowl. Now, in terms of their postseason potential opponents, it's a couple ways this thing can go. I'm going to just assume the Ravens win the North. I'm going to assume the Bills win against either the Jets or the Patriots to secure the 2 seed. I'd be floored if they lose both those games. So I'm penciling Baltimore in for the 3 seed right now. So assuming they're the 3 seed, it's either going to be the Steelers or the Chargers. The Steelers right now have the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Chargers. So if the season were to end today, it would be Houston and Steelers playing 4-5, and then it would be the Ravens and the Chargers. Now, the way that changes is if Pittsburgh loses to Cincinnati in Week 18 and the Chargers win both of their games. They play the Patriots and the Raiders. If that happens, then the Chargers move to 5, the Steelers go down to 6, and it's Ravens-Steelers at M&T Bank Stadium on Wild Card Weekend, and then Texans and Chargers. I'm curious, would you prefer to see Jim Harbaugh Part 2 come to M&T Bank Stadium, or would you rather see what looks like to be an imploding Steelers team right now? Everything seems to be going wrong on and off the field. Would you prefer to see AFC North Ravens-Steelers a third time?
If you guys are watching at home, go ahead and rewind when he mentions the fact that the Steelers could come to Baltimore. I got a little smile on my face. That just feels so enticing to have an opportunity to really put a close to the Steelers chapter. You don't want to face a team 3 times in the season. It's kind of dangerous, you know. Think back to the last time the Ravens played the Steelers in the playoffs after having 2 games in the regular season, and I think the Ravens beat them pretty handily. But there was also an opportunity in 2008 where the same thing happened, but the Steelers had beat the Ravens twice. The Ravens had Joe Flacco as a rookie and all of that stuff. I would say probably the Chargers because they've only played them once. The familiarity with Jim Harbaugh, there's some injury concerns there. The Chargers are built to run the football, and they haven't done a good job of it as of late. But for me, either way, it's fine because I think the Ravens should easily beat both teams. Something about that Steelers game feels enticing to me. I know a lot of Ravens fans would be nervous because there are the Steelers, and the Ravens did lose to them once this season. But I think me personally, from my heart, I would love to have the Steelers lose in Baltimore. But I'm sure if you're asking the Ravens coach, they'd say, bring on the Chargers because we only played them once this season. And logistically and game plan wise, it just makes more sense than to face the Steelers team for a third time.
Yeah, I'm with you. It always gets a little dicey when, you have so much tape on your opponent both ways, and you're kind of like, you start to say, well, how much do they know about us? How much do we know about them? I would love the narrative, like you said, of, oh, man, let's have the Ravens end the Steelers season in Baltimore. They tried to win the division on their home turf, couldn't do it. Now they come back for revenge, and they can't do it again. Let's go. But I would honestly probably pencil on a win against both teams. I don't know what's going on with that team in Pittsburgh right now. Patrick Queen went off after they lost to Baltimore. Cam Hayward's going off now. George Pickens is walking drama at this point, it seems. So we'll see what happens. But Ravens, they have a chance to control their own destiny. They win against Cleveland. They win their division. Sam, appreciate you as always for hopping on. Thank you so much. Tell people where they can find you and what you're working on. It is crazy that we are almost done with the regular season.
I'm sad. I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do in a few weeks after the Super Bowl is over. I guess move on to the offseason and the draft, but there's nothing like football every week to get the juices flowing. But yeah, it's coming to an end, unfortunately. But luckily for us, the Ravens have some postseason football ahead of them. But yeah, you can find me on Ravens Talk Podcast on YouTube, Ravens Talk Pod on Twitter X. I have an episode coming out. Should be out Friday afternoon, talking about the Steelers and the Texans and how the Ravens dominated them and what the outlook of the team looks moving forward. You can also find me on Instagram at Ravens Talk Podcast. Pretty popular on there. We try and have some fun with a lot of memes and stuff to get people excited about football and laughing at the other teams when the Ravens dominate. But that's, pretty much it.
I'll give you a sneak preview for that. If you like the movie Elle, be sure to go check out Sam on social media, Instagram, Twitter. He put together a hilarious video that encapsulates what has happened over the last couple of weeks for this Ravens team. So he's a great follow, obviously very knowledgeable about the game, as you just heard here on Locked On Ravens. Be sure to support him. Links in the description down below. Sam, thank you again. And thank you to everybody who tuned in to Locked On Ravens today. On the way out, hit the like and subscribe button, video form, audio form. As it goes, we'll have some bonus content this weekend because there are always headlines to talk about during the season. So be sure to stay tuned for that. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.